GIMP Lesson 1. I've already downloaded the file that we need for this lesson, so let's get started. First thing we want to do is open it. Go to File, Open, navigate to the folder where it has been saved to, which in this case is Downloads, 01begin.xcf. XCF is the native file format for GIMP. Open it. And actually the next thing we want to do is save it. So we're going to go to File, Save As. Now we're going to navigate to a new folder, in this case Pictures. We're going to create a new folder and title it Lesson 1. And within this, we're going to save it. The reason for saving it before doing anything is because you do not want to work with an original. You always want to work with a copy of it. That way, if you really foul up, you can go back and have a fresh copy to start with. Now, if you take a look at this picture, you'll notice that it's tilted off to one side. So we really should rotate it. We'll come up here to Image, Transform, and rotate. In this instance, we want to rotate it clockwise. 90 degrees works out. And it is now rotated. Now at this point, I'm going to do a save again. Go back to File, Save As, and this time I'm going to title it differently as Rotated, so that there is a easily distinguishable difference when we look at it in the files. Now for Lesson 1, you need to turn in two separate files. The first one that you need to turn in is a simple cropping. So over here in the toolbox, we're going to choose the cropping tool. If you hover your cursor over a tool, you'll notice that shortly it'll pop up with a description of what the tool is. We'll click on the cropping tool, move it somewhere to a corner, click and drag down until you've boxed in the part that you want, and then let go. If you notice, everything outside of that area is darkened. Everything is inside of it is the normal color. Now, if you did not get it quite the way that you want to, you can put the cursor back in, and for example, if I click here in the lower left, I can drag it down to the right, up, however I want. And when I let go, that's where it stays. If I put it to a side, I get a little box. If I click on it, it adjusts just that one side, and that works for either side, the top, or the bottom. Once I've made the selection just the way that I want it, all I have to do is hit Enter, and the cropping is done. This is the first file that you need to turn in. Let's go and do a save. Do a save as, and I'm going to title this properly, user initials dash L1 dash crop, and save it. Now, as I indicated at the beginning, you should always have an original to work with. For the next part, we can't work with this image, so I'm going to go to File, go back to Open, and I'm going to reopen Rotated. Now if you notice, there's now two tabs at the beginning, or at the top of the window, because you have two images open. This is an easy way to switch between the images. The next thing that we want to do is a selection. Now there's a couple different selection formats. Here's a rectangular one. Here's an elliptical one. This one is freeform. We're going to work with the elliptical. So click on it, and it works just like the cropping tool. Click, drag, and notice it makes an oval. And just like the cropping tool, if you want to make adjustments, it works just the same way. You can adjust it up and down, and there's actually a lot more ways to work with it, but you'll need to read the printed directions on how to do it. Once you have the oval selected just the way you want it, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply curves in order to highlight it. We're going to come up here to colors, choose curves, and notice you get a graph that has a slightly darkened area and a straight line. We're going to click on this line and drag it down. Now notice that it darkened the area within our selection, and if I click OK, then it's set that way, but that's not the way we want it. If you make a mistake like that, you can always go to Edit and choose Undo. Now in this case, since we want to darken the area outside of it, we are going to come up here and choose Invert. Now if you notice, besides this line moving, the area outside of it is moving. These are called marquees. And now with the inversion, the area outside of the ellipse is selected. So let's go back to Image, or rather to Colors, choose Curves. We're going to click somewhere around this area, and we're going to drag it down until the X and the Y are both about 190. Notice how that darkens the area now outside of the circle, and it appears that it is highlighted inside. We'll choose OK. Now the marquees will not show in the final image. However, it can be annoying, so we're going to come up here to Select, choose None. The marquees go away, and that's the way that the image will appear in its final form. One more thing I want to show you is the history dock. If we come up here to the dock, click on these arrows, here's a list of all of the commands that we have done. And if we click up here on base image, it shows us where it was at that point. If we click on invert selection, you can see that both the inner and the outer marquees are moving. If we simply choose back here on ellipse select, you can see only the ellipse is selected. Here we're applying the curves. Here's select none. If you select any of these other levels and press enter on the keyboard, you are back to that point. The history can be very, very convenient. If you make mistakes, you can go back a whole series, but once you press enter, it's set. Now at this point we need to save it, so we're going to go to File, Save As. Again, user's initials, dash L1 for lesson 1, dash curves. Click Save. Now one last thing that you may need to do is you may need to resize these images. If you take a look up here, you'll see that the size is 2592 by 3888, and especially in GIMP's native format, that creates an extremely large file. So we're going to want to size this downward. For lesson 1, we can get by with a fairly small image file. We're going to come up here to Image. We're going to choose Scale Image. Make sure that this chain is complete. If you break it by clicking on it, then each size can be adjusted individually. Notice that as I click up and down on this one, that this number stays the same. I'm going to come back here to scale image, make sure that's connected. I'm going to choose the larger of the two sizes, in this case the height. I'm going to set it to 1000 pixels, scale it. Now that may look small on the screen, but if you take a look down here, you'll see that you're looking at it at 18% of actual size. Let's put it at 100%. You can see that that's still quite large. Go to File and Save. From here you can upload it, but let's go take a look at the image a moment. We'll navigate to it. And if we take a look at the properties, we'll see that this image is now down to 2 megabytes. Whereas if we take a look at the original, you can see that it's 30 megabytes. 30 is too large to upload for most assignments. There may be cases where you need a file this large, but for this one there are limits, so scale it down to 1000 pixels in the larger dimension. And you are done. Remember, you need to read the printed material. It contains additional material that has not been covered in this demo.